Hello everyone, welcome to what?
Hey, I'll start in this week's episode. Oh, you go ahead. What are we doing?
No, you carry on.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's bonus podcast where we're going to be doing a classic character profile of Christine Hardman.
You can't even say
Christine
podcast
Appleby, if you
properly.
like. Shut up. We are doing a classic character profile. We've been watching a fair bit of the old a vintage Corrie recently, haven't we? But even when we were watching it a couple of years ago on the DVDs, Christine Hardman really stood out to me. And you, I think.
Yes.
We really liked her.
I think Christine Hardman's one of my favourite older characters. But then again, it's difficult to pick a character I don't like from the early days. They're all really great.
I know, but you get your main ones, don't you? You get your Enas, your Elsies, your Dennis, your Ken, and everyone.
Annies.
Exactly. And then there's a group of characters that just don't really stand the test of time alongside those, and nobody ever really talks about. So Doreen, Sheila, Esther Hayes, sorry, that's it, isn't it? And again, Christine Hardman. And some of those characters, still, after I've watched a fair number of episodes with them in now, I'm like, yeah, I'll take it or leave it, Sheila, whatever. I don't get on with Esther. But Christine, she was one that we didn't really know anything about before we started watching the classics. She's not gone down in Corrie history, apart from the most famous scene, which is her up on the roof in 1962. And I think if you were to push me to say anything about Christine back before we watched the DVDs during the pandemic, I might just about be able to say I think she was the one that was on the roof. But we're going to be telling you the whole slew of facts about her today, giving her our opinions on her, on what we've watched, because there's not a whole lot of the older episodes available online, but also kind of about why we like them. I mean, just what's
the point of doing a Christine Hardman character profile in 2024?
Well,
when she hasn't been in the show for
60 years, or give or take. What is it about Christine that particularly makes her memorable to you?
Like Val, she was a youngish woman who was intelligent and yearned for more in a non-obnoxious way. And like Ken Barlow always felt like he
doesn't do anything in a non-obnoxious way.
Always felt like he had ideas above his station in a kind of a way. But Val and Christine just kind of dreamed of something else. And especially Christine, she wasn't very educated.
Well, she went to school with Ken.
Yeah, but
he was in his class at school. No, she didn't go off to higher
not like Val. Val had quite a lot of, she knew about politics and things. Christine wasn't afraid to sort of admit she didn't know stuff.
But she didn't come across as ditzy or dopey. Like, if I can compare if I compare her to Doreen Lostock, for example, she was like airhead, wasn't she? And Sheila Bertel, not, she wasn't going to be getting into Mensa anytime soon. And I don't think that Christine would either, but I think she had a different kind of smartness. She knew what was going on. She just had a kind of knowing twinkle in her eye a lot of the time. She was kind of very carefree. She was laid back. She'd almost be like, I think she had a bit of a kind of cynical kind of knowing.
I wouldn't say she was carefree and laid back.
When I picture her, and I'm thinking of the episodes that we've seen, I picture her smiling and just kind of going into the cafe just with a bit of a let's have a bit of fun, but not. I don't know. It's hard to describe really. But but I know that there was an awful lot of tragedy and melancholy in her life as well.
She had a dark streak.
She did.
She was a complex character.
And I don't know whether some of the smiles that she put on were supposed to be masking the inner turmoil, but I picture her with her smile. And I was doing a bit of research about her the other day. There's so little that I can find, at least, of information out there online about the casting of Christine Hargreaves that played her, or anything in in the way of interviews about her or with her. But one thing that I found that I quite liked was that Tony Warren, when he was auditioning Christine Hargreaves for the role of Christine Hardman, this is just confusing, he said she's very plain, but when she smiles it's like the sun coming out. Aww. And she did have I don't know, saying she's very plain, not the nicest thing, but I totally agree with her smile. She really lit up the screen, and I think that's one of the things that made me take note of her and want to root for her, really, because despite the fact that she did suffer many a hardship, she was was kind of positive and I think, yeah, just a kind of, I would say, laid back about it.
She bounced back.
Yeah, she did bounce back after.
I don't understand how you can keep saying she's laid back when one of the major story points that was her trying to jump off a roof.
I think that she, in my head, she kind of had her ups and downs, shall we say, and at least there wasn't a down in that up of the roof story.
Do you see what I'm saying though? She felt things very deeply, and she had a dark core to her that was underneath all the smiles.
Yeah,
and I think that Christine Hargreaves was a fantastic actress. Really underrated, and it's sad how quickly she's been forgotten, really, as a character in Corrie. So that's why we're going to do this. I'm
pay her due.
I wonder how many people are listening to this who really know who Christine Hardman is. So I hope that some of you do, and I hope that some of you, if you don't, that you might be inspired to kind of go and find some older 60s episodes.
Yeah, because there are a good handful.
She wasn't in it even very long in the 60s. She was an original character.
Yeah, she first appeared in episode 2 of Coronation Street, and then she was gone by mid-1963. 123 episodes in total. Not very many of those were available online, but some of them are. And hopefully, if you've when you finish listening to this, you might go and hunt her down. Do you want to run down a couple of other Hardman stats, some hard facts, as it were?
She was a machinist. She was born... What?
I know, I just realised I put her occupation in there, and I don't think I ever put the occupations in the character. But it's because I copied it from Corriepedia, and I forgot to take it out this time.
You're going to need credit then.
Corriepedia.
Yeah. She was
I say that again. Corriepedia.
Born on the 19th of April, 1939, to George and May Hardman. She got married. She nearly got married, and then she got married.
Yeah.
Colin Appleby in 1962. First appeared 14th of December 1960. Last appeared 3rd July 1963. And you've said some of the other
123
things.
episodes, Christine Hargreaves. So you mentioned earlier that she was a cracking actress, and she was RADA trained, don't you know? So she was, she had a good bit of acting knowledge behind her, and I think she graduated with honours. She got a few roles in theatre after she left uni, including in St Anne's, and this is where she met Arthur Leslie, who of course went on to play Jack Walker. They were both playing in My Fair Lady when they were asked to audition for Corrie. She was playing Eliza Doolittle. He was Eliza's father, and the casting people came in and they're like, right, can we come and audition for Coronation Street? And that they did, and the rest is history. Christine credits her getting the job in the way that she said, charming in an offhand Christine Hardman-like way, apparently. But as I said earlier, Tony Warren kind of he was beguiled by that smile and wanted to see a little bit more of it.
Do you remember my personal fact about Christine Hargreaves?
I don't know. Have you got a good fact?
That when I was a baby, perhaps even before I was born, Mum and Dad rented their house out, or their flat out, to a filming crew who came from Birmingham, they said, and it was the play was called Jake's End. It was a BBC Two Playhouse production, aired in 1982, and Christine Hargreaves was in it.
So she's been in your parents' house?
Yeah.
That's amazing. They should have got her autograph.
Yeah.
Sold that. Well, so she got the role on Coronation Street alongside Arthur Leslie. She appeared in the dry runs of it, which was the practice filmings, and then, as I say, she first debuted in episode 2. So let's have a little rundown of Christine's life. Gemma, what was she up to before Coronation Street started?
So she was born in 13 Coronation Street. What one's that?
That's the one on the end by the shop. That's where Kevin and Abby are living.
Kevin and Abby lived there.
Yeah, later Ogdenville.
Okay. She went to Bessie Street. She was friends with Ken. 1953, George, her dad, bought a grocer's and a house in Oak Hill.
I found this quite fascinating that Oak Hill was still a thing back in the early days of Coronation Street. I mean, I think a lot of this backstory for Christine was fabricated later on, but a lot of it came from Darren Little in his books that he wrote in the 90s or early 2000s, wasn't it?
Making it up.
But I the story of Christine's parents was very well established from the beginning of the show, so maybe Oak Hill does get a mention that early on. I don't know.
1954, she gets a job in Elliston's raincoat factory, and she was 15 years old. The following year, her dad dies of a heart attack, and Christine and her mum have to return to number 13. May is really ashamed that they're going backwards and thinks that everyone's laughing at her, and she ends up it has a very poor effect on her mental health, and she gets admitted to a psychiatric hospital.
And this is the story that's going on in number 13 in the first fortnight of Coronation Street, isn't it? And this was, when we watched the DVDs, something that I had next to no knowledge of. I think May Hardman, Christine's mum, I mean, she's obviously there in the Corrie history books as the first death on Coronation Street, but she's not in any way a famous death other than being the first, is she? She's not a death that appears in the clip shows, but it's actually
It was very, very dramatic.
Yeah. So the lead up to it, basically, we see in 1960, in the first couple of episodes, Ena Sharples is spreading the words that May Hardman's gone mad, and Christine stands up to her, and that kind of shows her strength of character, doesn't it? Standing up to Ena Sharples, not everybody wanted to do that, saying, right, I'm going to sue you if you spread this words about my mum. She was quite mates with Esther Hayes, wasn't she, at number 5, and the pair of them talked together about Christine's concerns for her mum, especially because at the start of the show, May was due to be coming home from hospital soon, and Christine didn't want the neighbours talking about it. That didn't really work, though, because May comes home. I can't remember which episode it's in, but it's, 3, 4 maybe. May comes home and there's kids chanting through the window about her being balmy, so she was this crazy old lady.
A lot of people say that it's a shame that kids these days spend all their time inside on computers and stuff, but this is what they used to get up to.
Yeah, they used to stand outside old ladies' windows and chant that they were balmy outside. It's not on, is it? It really isn't.
Criticise their mental health.
Yeah, poor old May. So, meanwhile, during all of this, Christine's going out with this guy called Malcolm Wilkinson, who, in fact, fans, was played by Tony Booth, later married to Pat Phoenix.
Also, wasn't he Tony Blair's father-in-law?
Yes, I think you're right. Oh my gosh, I thought I'd muted that earlier. Anyway, so she's going out with him and really feeling the strain because he doesn't like the idea of dating somebody with a troubled mum, and he's staying away while May comes home, which isn't the supportive boyfriendly thing to do. But things seem to be get on track anyway when he invites her to the rugby club dance, and then this kind of carries on into the next year. So towards the end of 1960, I can't remember whether it was before Christmas, it might have been, this is when May dies, and there's a few scenes where she's complaining to Christine about having headaches. I think Christine, she kind of doesn't pay them much heed. She's just like, oh, Mum, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. And it's a really impactful death scene, isn't it? For May?
Gosh,
she's go on.
No, I was gonna say it's also quite experimental and with the sound effects and the camera effects.
It's almost like Ian McLeod had gone back in time and directed May Hardman's death scene.
That's why when people say, oh, it's not produced. Like Corrie to do this, that, or the other. It was dark from the very beginning, and they were doing experimental things from the very beginning.
Yeah, she's kind of there sitting in the lounge, isn't she? And there's some ticking clocks going on, and you just get this tick, 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 and May's being kind of driven mad by it. It was almost like Hitchcockian.
It was.
It
really was influenced by that.
And she's there kind of going up against the wall, and I think she's banging on the wall that leads to the shop, and then whoever it was in the shop at the time, Florrie, or I don't remember, come in, and they find May dead on the floor there. So the first casualty of Coronation Street, and this leaves Christine feeling mega guilty for rowing with her before she went out.
Oh dear.
And this is the first of many a tragedy for poor Christine.
Yeah, so her boyfriend in 1961, Malcolm, he's avoiding her because it's a bit awkward because her mum died.
He just doesn't want the hassle. He wants a girl, so he's got a bit of skirt and then somebody on his arm.
She wasn't very sunny, was she? She wasn't very cheerful after her mother died.
No.
So she finds out that he's taken another woman out on the night before her mum's funeral, so she dumps him. Mm-hmm. Then she struggles with money because the house tenancy transfers to her.
Another Corrie first, maybe. Money woes at number 13 and all.
The landlord puts the rent up, and the insurance is offering £20 for the death instead of £60 because May didn't say that she didn't declare her nervous disorder.
Oh my God.
And then the plumber, Joe Mackinson, turns up saying she owes him money too. Then he feels sorry for her, tears up the bill, and ends up paying it himself.
We saw some of Joe, didn't we? They've got some of those early episodes from 1961 online.
Did he remember how much it was? He shouldn't tear bills up and then pay them afterwards.
Well, I don't know whether he actually tore it up or whether he just figuratively did it. But yeah, so this was... I didn't go much on this guy.
No.
This is another story that I didn't know much about before going into it. And we get to see a bit... it was a bit of a bog standard relationship story and another not so great guy for Christine in the end. But so is Joe Mackinson. I was going to say Joe McIntyre there, which is a different character.
Yeah, I didn't really go much on any of her boyfriends, really. I think she just ended up with loads of losers.
Yeah. She should have gone out with Ken.
I don't know much about the Appleby guy.
No, well, we haven't seen any of that.
No.
We haven't. Can only read about it. But yeah, I do wonder whether it was ever mooted, the idea of putting her and Ken together, because like I said, they went to Bessie Street together, and back then that was the comprehensive school, wasn't it, rather than the primary school.
Well, like I said,
now.
She was very similar to Val in a way, that they both had their heads screwed on.
I mean, Ken and Christine's paths did cross in some quite crucial moments in her story, as we later find. But yeah, she's the one that got away.
Well, she gets close to Joe, the plumber, and they agree to go to a Johnny Dankworth jazz concert. But they miss it because her pompous uncle Edwin turns up. But then they go to the cinema instead.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. This is very granular, Michael, isn't it? So Joe tells Christine he's turned down a job in Newcastle with a £2 a week pay rise. He'd rather be with her instead. And they're besotted with each other. Everyone starts gossiping. Ena thinks they're spending too much time alone with each other, but Christine doesn't care. But she is a bit annoyed at the fact that Doreen is making eyes at him. I think
this kind of, when I was saying about her being careful, she was a bit devil may care. I like her, she doesn't care what the neighbours think about her. And I think...
Yeah, the social norms.
Yeah, I think that there would be some characters that would kowtow a little bit more to the likes of Ena Sharples than Christine would.
Florrie Lindley would.
Yeah. She was a mouse of a woman, Florrie Lindley, compared to Christine, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, there's plenty of strong women in Corrie. They were quite famous for it. She was one of the first. So she has a row with Joe, and they fall out with each other when he brings Malcolm up. But then they get back together again within weeks. And then they go to Snape's cafe and he proposes to her. That things go sour and he stands her up in favour of going to the Orinoco Club with Dennis.
So Snape's cafe was the OG cafe on Coronation Street.
I just love that it was called Snape's Cafe. I know I shouldn't, but I just imagine Professor Snape just
Rickman
behind
there.
The bar, like, what do you want?
Cup of tea. Yeah, the usual Miss Hardman, I mean.
An iced bun. Again. I will bring it to your table.
No, the Snape in question was actually Sylvia Snape, wasn't it? Played by the one and only Patricia Routledge.
Yes.
Beloved British actress, dame of TV, still going strong.
I know.
Like... I can't remember how old she is. She's in her early 90s, isn't she now? So that must put her at a very similar age to William Roach and Christine Hargreaves as well.
She's still doing talks.
Is she? Is she really?
Yeah,
my God! Like,
love to go and
talk about Corrie comebacks. Come on. Sylvia Snape back on the street. There's only so many people that can come back from that era.
Snape. Sylvia Snape.
It was so funny seeing some clips of her because I'm just so used to her playing Hyacinth Bouquet and Keeping Up Appearances and later Hetty Wainthropp.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I think Hetty Wainthropp was kind of... She wasn't the same kind of character, but she was, she's still...
She had a way about her in a way that she used to... kind of hold her.
She reminds me a bit of Julia Child.
Yeah, she could have made a good Julia Child.
Tall woman energy.
She was only in Corrie for, I'm going to say, 10 episodes in total.
Barely in it.
I think during 1961 and sort of in the early days, they were trying characters out, and Patricia Routledge kind of came in, went out, and that was it. This whole... It was a cafe and then it turned into an Italian restaurant, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it must have only been a cafe on screen for no more than 6 months. Yeah, God. Anyway, just having a little reminisce there and what could have been if we'd have been able to have been blessed with Patricia Routledge for a longer term on Coronation Street. But well.
Just to be clear, I know that Patricia Routledge is not incredibly tall. She gives off that energy.
Did you say? What did you say?
I said she gives off tall woman energy.
I don't know how old she is. I've only seen her sitting down.
What's that got to do with how tall she is?
You
said how old she is.
I don't know how tall she is. I've only seen her sitting down. I have met her in real life once. She was sitting, and she said, "No. Sorry, I can't talk. We need to get that to filming." Claim to fame.
We came here and said, "Do you remember me? I was interrupting you, and you're trying to work."
Anyway, we're not here to talk about her. We're not doing a Sylvia Snake character profile, although that probably basically would have been it. The amount of time that she was in the show.
Right. So Snape's cafe, they fall out. He tries to get back in her favour. By tries to blackmail her uncle.
Yeah, he knows that Christine's uncle Edward has got a bit on the side from work.
A perv, that man.
Yeah, there was one time when Joe comes round the house and Edwin's there with his floozy in the car, and Joe kind of spots them, so he uses a bit of a blackmail, and so that he wants to get his approval to marry Christine in the end, but. Yeah, things don't work, do they?
Don't work out. Christine says he was a bit of a penny pincher.
And she ain't got time for penny pinchers because she's got money troubles.
Exactly. Well, no, you need a penny
pincher, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, no.
He paid off her bills and she's like, well, goodbye.
Thanks very much, Chuck.
She befriends co-worker Jean Stark, who's got very controlling parents, and she ends up running away from home. And I can't remember if she stayed with Christine or not.
I can't remember either.
She might have done.
Jean was one of the other Ellison's Raincoat
She was
Factory's
very young,
girl, wasn't she? Yeah.
And her parents were just always breathing down her neck.
I don't remember a whole lot about her from what we've seen. There was a gaggle of Raincoat Factory girls at the beginning, wasn't there? Like Sheila and Doreen, and there was another. They again were just trying them out and hanging around. And this one's problem was that she had very controlling parents. But Christine stood up to them. Yeah, she said, "Jean, you need to lead your own life like me. Ain't got a mum anymore." And then they backed down. So good for her.
That's right. And Jean helps Christine write a letter to Joe to tell him to take a running jump when he writes to her saying, "Please take me back." Mm-hmm. Then she gets closer to Dennis Tanner, but as a friend, and they go to the cinema together, and he plays guitar at number 13 because I think his mum Elsie didn't really want to hear it.
It was only next door, and the walls were probably pretty thin back there, weren't they?
So by this point, Snape's Cafe is now an Italian restaurant. Mm-hmm. Was it called Mario's?
I think it was. I just had a little look before we started recording, and you can find an episode online. I mean, I should know. I've seen it before. I just wanted to check it was still there with the character of Mario in, and was it Mario and Luigi? I can't remember, but they might as well have been because they were so stereotypical. This pair, weren't they? And having a look into it, I mean, you might not be surprised to hear that the locals of Coronation Street didn't take too kindly to having an Italian restaurant in Weatherfield in 1961, and nobody knew what any of the recipes were, like spaghetti bolognese. What on earth is that? Lasagna. But yeah, Christine kind of catches the eye of Mario, doesn't she?
Yeah, but he gets suspicious of her and Dennis when she calls Dennis love, which he kind of got the wrong end of the stick there because, he's Italian. Christine wins a trip to Cornwall.
Whoa.
She has a holiday romance with a guy called Steve, and she tries to hide this from Mario, but it gets tricky when Steve shows up looking for her, and things fizzle out with both of them eventually.
She just was like picking and choosing, wasn't she?
Well, why not? A good-looking girl like Christine.
Spend the money and cast them aside.
Minnie gets hit on the head by a fallen slate from the roof of Christine's house, and Ena threatens to sue her, and then Albert reassures her that Ena's just blown hot air about it, and at the end of the day, it's the landlord's fault whether she got hit on the head by a slate or not.
Yeah, the story here, Ena and Minnie had a fallout about something, and when Ena finds out that Minnie's been hit on the head with this falling slate, she rallies behind her friend.
She does. Hurrah!
Wasn't that? I'm not making this up. Wasn't there a story about wasn't Tracy hit on the head by a falling slate or so? Oh, this was how the scaffolding story started the other year.
All those dodgy roof tiles over there around.
Well, if the slates were falling off the roof of them back in 1961, just think what they're like now. Especially when they've had Andrea Beckett crawling around on top of them and Neil.
After they go out to a concert one night, she bumps into Ken at the train station. He's decided to go to London. He's fed up with his dad telling him what to do, but she persuades him to stay in Weatherfield.
Yeah, that's another scene that you can see online as well. A nice little Christine Ken nighttime scene. They had there were ships that passed in the night, and a nice little moment where she's persuading him not to give up on Weatherfield just yet.
She gets up Annie's nose when she's been a bit cheeky, helping out behind the bar at the Rovers. Then we have the equity strike, and so the actress disappears off screen for 6 months.
Pretty much everyone else, apart from, 13, 14 core members of the cast.
She's supposed to be living at number 13 this whole time. She's not listening to tapes because they haven't been invented yet.
Yeah, we're supposed to believe that she's there, but just not on screen at the moment, and she doesn't pop up again until June 1962. And there's a very, she launches straight into the suicide story here. If you've seen pictures of her up on the roof, that was within 2-3 episodes of her comeback. And I would say, from what I've seen of Christine in 1961, I didn't get any hints of her feeling so down about her life that she wanted to end it all. Did you?
Yeah, but sitting about 6 months by yourself in your house.
Yeah, it was like a little lockdown for her, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, apparently, when she turns back in 1962, she's there at the raincoat factory. She turns up late for work one day. She doesn't care when somebody tells her you need to get here on time or you'll be in trouble. Later on that evening, Sheila and Doreen take her out bowling, but she's just not in the mood for it. She ends up slipping off home without telling them and confides to Elsie Tanner that she can't cope with any more tomorrows. So, yeah, whatever she's been getting up to in that house when she's not been able to appear on screen, she's going into the doldrums, isn't she?
I will say that Corrie, the scripts in Corrie were a bit more poetic, weren't they, back in the day? I think that maybe... It didn't feel unrealistic, though. It just was a bit more dramatic.
Well, if you want dramatic, Christine Hardman up on the roof a couple of episodes later is certainly up there, isn't it? We watched this episode in preparation at the weekend, didn't we? We'd seen it before, but just to remind ourselves, it was a really good episode. It starts with her in the factory and she's just looking really glum. The other girls can't really get anything out of her. There's a great scene where she's up on the roof of the raincoat factory, which is actually, what's now the ex-St John's Hotel next to the old Key Street studios, and she's there just kind of looking through the railings, hands up on them, and just looking like, what's the point? What's left? What's the use of this? And by the end of the episode, by midway through the episode, I suppose, she's up there properly on the roof, looking down over onto the floor, and it put me in mind of the Kelly Nealon episode with the volume wall. Yeah. Because one of the things that I remember not at all liking about that episode is when they did the panning shot from, I can't remember which way they did it or whether they did it both, like the street up to the roof. They did
down because they followed the glass
was a bottle, wasn't it? Yeah. But in this episode, there actually is a proper panning shot from the characters on the floor, and there's a police car and they're all looking up and pointing, a proper panning shot all the way up to the roof of this. And I've never read anything about the making of, but just watching it again at the weekend, I was thinking, they didn't have health and safety in the 1960s.
I'd love to talk to William Roach about this.
I would love to know, was there a safety net? Did they just say, just get out there, girl, we're paying you to do whatever we tell you, Krista? I don't know.
This was on the DVDs, wasn't it?
Yes.
So... and it's also on YouTube if you want to watch this one. I kind of thought it's a shame, really, because they did film this on the roof. They did make poor Christine Hargreaves go up there, and William Roach.
There was like a cattle prod behind her,
and it looked like it quite uncomfortable because she was on a sloping roof.
Yeah, she had her back against it.
She was kind of leaning with her elbows propped against it to sort of shift herself forward a little bit. But you couldn't really tell it was a roof. It could have been. They could have built that because there was no... apart from the panning shot, there was no real way to tell that she was on a roof because it was zoomed in so much, and because it was black and white, and because, you know, the resolution's really poor. It was looks like she's got a wind machine.
Yeah. Well, it could have been like Jeff and Yasmin on the roof a few years ago, couldn't it? Just a little constructed roof in the studio. Yeah. But it was really up there.
But William Roach kind of inches his way around as Ken to try to talk her down. And he does look quite scared of how high they were.
At least she got to just stand still on it. Yeah, you're right. He had to kind of work his way around to her. There was also a police officer that goes up there first, and he kind of puts his foot in it by saying, "Oh, what would your mum think about this?" Not knowing that her mum's been dead for 2 years. Well, she says,
"I can probably see her from here. The cemetery's just over there," and he's like, awkward. Yeah. Well, I can't deal with you. I'm going. So let Ken do it.
They get Ken come up, and he's able to, you know, he's a great orator. Is Ken very persuasive? He should be he should probably work for the police as a talker downer or whatever they call it.
Talker downer.
But I never. There's down on the street. You got Minnie Caldwell there, Martha Longhurst. There's a couple of the factory girls. Like going, oh no, I can't look. Martha Longhurst is just standing up there. It's almost like she's willing her to jump, isn't she? Just for a bit of drama. But yeah, that was a really, really fantastic episode. If you haven't seen that, do. It doesn't go into, you know, none of the suicide episodes on Coronation Street really like to go into the details too much of it, and there's certainly, I didn't watch it feeling like they're trying to raise awareness or anything like this, but the sheer state of depression that Christine had got herself into for this episode really came through. I thought it was fantastic performances all the way around. It does make me wonder, when people were watching it back then, did they think that she was going to jump? Because there was no spoilers or anything back in those days. There was no, you know, Coronation Street wouldn't do that, because the show had only been on air a year and a half at this point. How much were people thinking, is this it for Christine?
Well, there weren't spoilers, but people did, like, when they had what was the other one? Sheila Bertels.
Sheila Bertels a couple of years later when they touched on Suicide Next.
Yeah, but she was supposed to go ahead with it.
Yes, you're right.
And they caved because everybody complained. So
yeah, word got out that Sheila Bertels a couple of years later was going to take her own life, and then they had to hastily re-edit. Yeah, they filmed it. They absolutely filmed her doing the deed. But yeah, this one, obviously it was never going to be the way that she was going to jump, but this little return that she did midway through 1962, it was only for 6 episodes, and then she was off again. This is a great tale of how quickly things moved back in Coronation Street those days, and you know, this is another thing that we complain about nowadays. Like, as soon as somebody decides they want to emigrate the other side of the world, they're off before you know it. Well, in the days following this roof incident with Christine, I just
want to say it was a really great episode, and she was heartbreaking. Christine Hargreaves did a fantastic job. It felt like a story that probably quite a lot of younger people watching might have sympathised with,
identified with,
you know, because you come in, you know, the war's been over for ages. You are a young person living in quite what's the word? Unpleasant conditions.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of been promised, you know, the war's been over for 15 years at this point, and you kind of grew up. She was only 6 when the war ended, but you kind of grown up into this world thinking that life's going to be better and you know, fresh new horizons, and here she still was in the back end of the street in Weatherfield.
And the 60s brought with it lots of revolutionary cultural things that you probably felt like you weren't able to be part of if you're stuck in a back street going to work in a raincoat factory.
Yeah.
She wanted more out of her life the whole time she was in the show.
Yeah, and she didn't have any family. Well, I mean, she had this horrible Uncle Edwin. Her mum was dead. She didn't have a fellow. She had the odd, you know, couple of friends, a few fellas here and there.
Well, she just thought life was pointless. And I think there's hardly anybody in the whole world who's not thought to themselves, what is the point of any of this? Not to the, you know, the extent of going up on a roof, but like I said before, I think there's a lot of research that suicides can be quite impulsive. So
Well, I would say that there didn't appear to be a whole lot of lead up to it, but I think that's one of the things that made it more shocking, in that we had this character who did have this wonderful smile that lit up the screen, and then we don't see her for 6 months, and now she's gone straight to this.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to say to anybody, if you ever feel like this, you're not weird. You're not like, don't feel like it's desperate and terrible and you have to go through with it because you are alone in how you feel, because like I said, lots of people feel like this, and it sometimes comes upon you very suddenly, and it will go away. Wow. But not if you jump.
Not if you jump, and you can't always have Ken Barlow.
Ken Barlow won't save you. So, he can't go up the roof. He's too old.
He could skydive on top of you nowadays, couldn't he?
No, he could do. It's probably better to get him to do a cameo.
So she does take the opportunity after this to try and turn her life around. She has a night on sedation. She then resolves to live her life to the max, including reuniting with this old flame called Colin Appleby. So they bump into each other at the bowling alley. I think it might be the next episode after the rooftop one. He'd been to Bessie Street School with her as well. He'd lived in Maudsley Street, so the one that backs onto Coronation Street. So the idea is that, he'd been around just out of reach for all this time. He'd become a handbag salesman. Annie Walker doesn't like the idea of Colin being with Christine. She thinks that he's too good for her.
What a specific job to be a handbag salesman.
I can imagine that's a proper 60s thing, isn't it? Go around.
Why do you need to sell handbags? They sell themselves, don't they? Do you want somewhere to put your stuff? Yeah, I do. Well, here you go. What colour do you want?
They just had, there was a bigger market for door-to-door salesmen back then. You got your handbags, you got your mops.
Yeah.
Rubber gloves.
That's it, really.
All the things that women could want.
Yeah.
Because they weren't allowed out of the house back in the 60s, obviously chained to the cooker.
Handbag.
Anyway, he wasn't very popular with very many of the other characters. Annie thinks that he's too good for Christine, so not a match at all. The girls find him creepy and remember what a slime ball he was at school. So no one was really into this relationship. But Christine says, "Stop it! This is just what I need." And within the space of 2 episodes, they're married and off to London. So like I said, this was a 6-episode stint that she was in at this point, and she goes from being a bit sad in the factory to going on top of the factory roof to meeting this guy Colin after however many years to being married to him. So
wow,
you know what she wanted. She took the bull by the horns and
went to London.
Good for her. She didn't seem to want to love him. She just wanted a change. And
marriage, is like that, isn't it?
She wanted somebody to cook for, clearly, and scrub with her lovely mop.
And somewhere to take a handbag.
Yeah, exactly. So 4 months later, though, tragedy strikes again. Of course it does. Christine Hardman can never be happy for long. She's back in town looking for somewhere to stay, and people are like, uh-oh, curtain twitchers ahoy. What's going on here? Has she left her new husband? But it turns out that he died in a car accident a couple of weeks before. Oh. So she's a widow. How old is she at this point? 24, 25 or so. She's back on Coronation Street. She just can't
catch a break.
She can't catch a break, and it's like for a period that street was all like almost attracting her back. They went off to Oak Hill, back to Coronation Street.
It's like her dark.
You marry Colin
magnet.
Appleby, back to Coronation Street. It is. I mean, she was able to get away from its clasp eventually in 1963. Grasp, whatever.
She moves in with Elsie.
She gets a job in Miami Modes.
Selling handbags.
Probably selling that. Did they have handbags?
She got some tricks off her husband. As he was lying there in the gutter, he was like, "Christine, always show off the straps. Pair what really sells."
See, I wonder whether she got a bit of a handout on the old life insurance, because after what happened with her mum,
maybe she was
she's like, right, we need to make sure
we're covered for everything.
Sure we're covered. We're getting in this car. Anyway, this begins her kind of final story in the street, and one that I still can't really get behind. She starts to get close to Frank Barlow, which is Ken's dad.
Right.
So she was at school with Ken.
Yeah.
And by the end of 1962, she kind of I can't remember whether she's going out with him or not, or whether she's got her eye on him.
Well, hang on.
The story is that they're both they've both lost somebody. Frank's wife, Ida, had been also involved in a road traffic accident a while before. I mean, there must be a good, 20 years between them? 25 years? At least. And
yes.
they're getting together, and she starts doing some cleaning for him around number 3, and Chris and Valerie Barlow. No, she wasn't Valerie Barlow at this point, was she? But Val, Ken's girlfriend, does not like the fact that they're seeing each other.
Well, no, Val thinks she's got her eye on Ken, but actually she's gunning for the dad.
Yes, you're right.
I just wanted to say a quick thing about Frank Barlow, in case you thought he might be sort of a kind of like a
smart
a bit
ladies
of a catch.
Man.
Yeah, like a good, like maybe a George Clooney type. Couldn't be further from that at all. He was a portly, pipe-puffing ignoramus, really, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He didn't really like Ken going to university. He was threatened by his kids' intelligence. He
was working class and proud of it.
He didn't like hoity-toity fancy pants, like
and Christine wasn't that,
signs.
But it felt like personality-wise, they couldn't have been any further apart from each other. He
definitely felt like he was very, very content to be where he was in life, and Christine, like we said, she always had.
She wanted to go places.
Yeah, she's not going anywhere with Frank Barlow.
It's like I don't know what the thinking was for this. Had they run out of ideas for the character?
No, I'd love to know why they thought this was a good idea.
Was this always the exit story for her? I wonder. Like, how should we get rid of her? Let's have that.
You tried to look into why Christine
I couldn't find anything about why Christine wanted to leave in the end. I mean, she ended up starring in loads of other TV shows.
Hang on, let's finish the story.
Oh, okay. So she's sniffing around Frank Barlow by the end of 1962. Do you want to just take over and finish off with 1963? Ken
discovers Christine's got a key to number 3, his house. And he confronts his dad about it. He's like, well, me and Christine are going to get married. Ken's not happy about this. So he's like,
what?
This is not why I rescued her from the roof. She could be my stepmom.
I was hoping the long-term plan here was that she'd be cooking my tea, not yours, Dad.
Well,
I suppose she still can. And I'll have to call her mum.
Yeah. The street's residents don't like this. They snub both of them when they go public with their relationship. And Frank's trying to explain to Elsie that they're both just lonely. And Elsie and Ena hatch a plot to try to break them up. No, to put people off the scent by telling everybody that Christine has a boyfriend. And Christine's not happy about their meddling and tells them to mind their own business.
Yeah, she's like, she knows her own mind, and if she wants to go out with Frank Barlow, then she will. Thank you very much.
I don't think you can tell Christine what to do.
No.
Frank tells Elsie he's going to ask Christine to marry him, and Ida wouldn't want him to be unhappy. He proposes, but she's like, that's a good question.
Not too sure. I remember watching, I don't know which episode it was that was on around here. It might have been the other one that we saw the other day, which comes a bit later on. But we were just going through the DVDs, like whatever, not really knowing what was coming ahead. And this relationship came up. And we just couldn't believe it. Why is Christine
what have we missed?
Going out with Frank?
So she's seen out at the theatre with the plumber, Joe.
Do you remember Joe? Joe Mackinson from earlier.
Elsie confronts her about it, and she's like, I was not serious. I don't really know what I think about Frank. I haven't decided yet.
I haven't seen any of this, but from reading about it, it just seems that Christine becomes a bit of a bitch in her final 6 months or so.
She doesn't really care about Frank's feelings, and Frank, he seems like he's lost in a fantasy where he hasn't really stopped to wonder, like, why is this young, beautiful woman keen to throw herself at me?
And he had been lost since Ida died, and he really does come across to me as the kind of guy who needs somebody there darning his socks.
Exactly. There's quite a few scenes in the Barlow household when, after Ida dies, when they're all kind of struggling because it was 3 men left. I don't remember whether David lived there.
No, I think David goes off to London for his footballing. Yeah.
But so Ken and Frank are struggling because they don't really have any household abilities, do they? Like trying to cook tea and do the shopping and tidying up and setting the fires and all that kind of stuff that Ida would have done. So yeah, like I think it's quite common, especially for men of this era. I just thought of a storyline
title for if we were doing the podcast back then when Ida gets hit by a bus. Ida down. Sorry for the interruption.
I think it's very common for men of this kind of era to have really considered a wife to be part of the running of a household, not just a romantic life partner. So he was looking for a replacement,
basically,
maid. So
I wonder. I don't know what the age gap is between Kevin and Abby if we compare Frank with Christine.
Okay.
Because they're probably, I don't know whether there was a whole lot in it, but yeah, it seemed odd back then.
Well, I will pick it up in a minute about something.
What?
That I thought was weird about the relationship.
Go on. Okay.
So she doesn't really know how she feels about Frank. But Frank tells Ken that he's going to disown him for interfering too much in his life. Then Esther tells him about seeing Christine and Joe out together. And he's gutted. Ken's like not showing him any sympathy at all. And Esther tries to apologise to Christine. She refuses to accept it. And Val tells Christine, leave Frank alone. And Christine's like, you don't tell me what to do, lady. So she carries on going out with Joe. Then
she's just like blatantly and brazenly two-timing Frank, isn't she?
Well, she's probably thinking, I have my bit of fun before I marry this guy, but I don't know why she wanted to marry him.
I know.
I can't work this out.
I want to know, like, what did she think about potentially becoming Ken's stepmother?
Yeah, I don't know.
The guy that she went to school with, that she was literally in the same class.
There are so many missing episodes. Like they're not. There's only half an episode missing of Coronation Street.
Yeah, they're just not available.
But they're not available, so we don't know a lot of the stuff that happens. But it's a mystery, isn't it? It's kind of like, where did they marry? What happened to the Mary Celeste? Why did Christine Hardman want to marry Frank Barlow? Is the Yeti real? Don't know. Don't know about any of those. She carries on going out with Joe, and then Alf corners him one evening, and they have a fight. And Christine confronts Frank about it, but he doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah, she thinks that Frank has set Alf on Joe. Yeah.
So Joe ends things with Christine, and Elsie says, you got to decide what you're doing about Frank. And so she tells Frank, I will marry you. And Ken says, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Then...
Oh yeah, there's a mystery that happens next.
Then Mr. Wormold gets told...
He's the landlord of number 13.
That Elsie is subletting to Christine.
Yeah, because Christine's back on the street now. She's living with Elsie, and she shouldn't
I said
be.
that earlier.
Yeah.
And so she's not allowed to, so she's got to ship out. She moves in with Esther. Esther's moved to Oak Hill.
Yeah.
So she goes to Oak Hill.
Oak Hill's left. Esther's left the show at this point. Yeah, back to Oak Hill again.
So Christine moves out of the street, and it turns out it was actually her that wrote the letter.
She dubbed herself
because she's like, I don't want to live here anymore, but I can't possibly just tell Elsie I'm moving. I'm gonna have to do some strange subterfuge here.
Yeah, she doesn't like the idea that everyone's gossiping about her, and the only way that she can think of to get out of this situation is if she dobs herself into the landlord.
What does she think was going to happen?
Told you she was smart.
With Frank, moving in with Frank, because Frank lives in Coronation Street.
Well, I don't think she'd really committed to it.
She's not really got a long-term plan here, is she?
No, she just wanted a bit of company.
Agrees to keep it a secret that she's done this.
Yeah, Conceptor was one of the suspects for who dobbed her into Mr. Wormold at one point.
So,
apparently.
her only surviving relative, Uncle Edwin, the perv, comes back to the street to check Frank out to make sure that he's okay to marry his, Christina's niece. And he thinks he's all right. But Christine's getting too much pressure from this. She goes off and she says she's got a headache. Then Frank goes off and buys a wedding suit.
This is the episode that we've just seen, isn't it?
Without talking to her. And he also, this is what I thought was weird and creepy, and I don't think it was the wedding suit buying without talking to her that was the problem. It was what he bought her as a present.
Oh, yes.
And this was a stuffed...
Like a little dog, wasn't it?
It was like a white stuffed dog that you put your nightie inside when you're not wearing it.
Oh, is that what it was? I didn't get that.
And she's like, what is this? It was just creepy and weird because, like, it just emphasised the age gap.
Yeah, him buying her what looked like a little toy dog. Yeah,
and he's like, I didn't know if you'd like it. Like, his idea of what she likes is just really infantile and icky to imagine him, like, in the shop going, oh, we've got a young filly at home. What do young girls like? Yeah. And the shop assistant like, I don't know, toy drum? What do you mean? And he buys her this, and she's just staring at it, and she just says, I can't marry you. I can't marry you. I don't love you. And that was the best decision, really. I think so. Frank...
Although, I mean, if she'd have stayed with him, she'd have got a good share of that pool's money that he ended up winning, wouldn't she? So she's probably kicking herself eventually.
Series of big mistakes that she makes. But, yeah, Frank's expression in that scene where he gives her the dog and she's staring at it and turning it over in her hands. And he's just got this kind of, like, bemused sort of, like... I don't know what to do with you kind of look on his face. And I felt really sorry for him too, because he was in over his head. Exactly, he didn't know what the hell he was doing. Why he's with this woman, he just was so desperately lonely and he didn't want to be by himself anymore. And he just fed up with making his own dinner.
Yeah, I mean, we can explain the character motivations behind this, but at the end of the day, taking a step back from it, it was just not a great idea for a story, I'm going to say.
I wish I knew
maybe
more.
If I was able to see it, I would change my mind about it, but it seems weird. It seems Kevin and Molly odd. It seems Martin and Katie odd, you know, and back in... who knows? It's lost to time.
Okay. So she and Val make up again, so that's good. She gets offered the supervisor's job at Miami Modes. And Doc Greenhouse is very resentful of this. Elsie starts to think the power's gone to her head when she's bossing Elsie and Dot around, and eventually Elsie goes to personnel to complain about her, and she gets put in charge of another department. Christine does, and that's the last we ever see of her.
Yeah, it seems like she had a real kind of whoop, and she's gone exit to her. So Elsie complains about her. She gets shipped off to another department in Miami Modes. I don't know whether... I can't picture Miami Modes in my head. Was it a big department store and she was just in another room that they didn't have a step for?
You only ever saw like, lots of clothing racks.
Yeah. But anyways, she goes work. I think she's shipped off to the children's department. It wasn't like... or something, and we just don't see her ever again.
What's his face shop?
Gamma Garments.
Yeah, it wasn't like Gamma Garments. That was like a very quaint small shop. You can tell... You could kind of imagine what the rest of the shop looked like. But Miami Modes seemed much bigger. I
can't... They get conflated in my head, the two of them, to be honest. Anyway, so there we go. She just had a very kind of low-key exit.
She's living elsewhere, isn't she? She's not living on the street, and she's not working anywhere you see the characters, so that's the end of her.
Yeah, well, we hear a little bit about her in the following year. So in 1966, Len Fairclough mentions that she's living in a flat on the other side of town, and also when Elsie and Steve get married in 1967, we get a telegram from her.
I've missed those.
I know,
scenes in the old Corrie, when they would sit down for their wedding breakfast. The best man would read out the telegrams of well wishes from people that couldn't. Coronation Street now, you just get a phone call going, sorry, I can't make it to the wedding.
Yeah.
Like, that was...
What's that, Rosie? You're still stuck in Japan?
Yeah, exactly. But in the old days, it would make more sense because people couldn't afford to travel.
I'd really like somebody to do a retro wedding, like a 60s wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Like Glenda, maybe.
But you still would get a telegram. So remember,
No, but you could make it out like you'd got one, couldn't you?
Remember we looked up how much it cost to send a telegram, and it's like 70 quid or something.
Well, it's a wedding. Flash the boat out.
I know, but that's what people did in the day, whereas now you just go.
You send a text. 1961... We find out that 71, we find out that Christine is living here in sunny old Southampton.
Yay! What part?
And by 1973, she's married with children. So looks like things turn out nicely for her, even though we don't get to see any of it on screen. And who knows? We might just bump into her next time we're walking down the street, because Christine Hardman could be alive and well. We hear that she's 1979 still happily living down south, according to Ena. And as far as I can tell, that's the last time she got a proper on-screen mention. But, you know, she had a hard time, didn't she? But it all turned out all right for her in the end.
Come down south and living is easy down here, I'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately.
Southampton, Bill Webster loves it. Yeah. Alec Gilroy loves it. And now Christine
Christine.
Hardman. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Christine will never appear on Coronation Street again because very sadly, Christine Hargreaves died very young.
Yeah, 45.
She in August 1984. So that would have been only a few years after she filmed the thing at my mum and dad's house.
Yeah, I know. But she did have a huge... If you look on her IMDb page, absolutely tons of stuff she did after Coronation Street.
She's very talented.
Yeah. I mean, she did Z-Car, she did Juliet Bravo, all the classics. She did Pardon the Expression as well, which was the spin-off show starring Arthur Lowe as Leonard Swindley, and she played a character called Dawn in that, so she wasn't playing...
That's weird.
Christine, even though this was a Coronation Street spin-off, but whatever. And and as you say, she died in 1984. She was actually in the film 1984, which I didn't realise. I mean, I've not seen that film in, I don't know, 20 years or so. And back when I watched it, I certainly wouldn't have known who Christine Hargreaves was. But it's kind of made me want to watch it again. Apparently she plays like a lunch lady. I don't know, as she serves a dollop of slop to Winston. Is it Winston in that? I can't remember.
I know I read it once, but
it's a
you don't
film.
You don't need to have read it to know the story.
Yeah, or indeed the Apple Mac advert. So this is the time where I'd like to, regale you with fascinating quotes from and about Christine Hargreaves about a time in Corrie, or saying why she left the show or her final reflections. I couldn't find anything, and I was thumbing through my books, and it's This is, I guess, one of the reasons why the character is lost to history. There aren't even very many good publicity photos of her, but for that period from December 1960 to July 1963, with a bit of a gap in between, for me, she was a real shining light of the programme, and I think she deserves to have a lot more credit than she actually ended up getting.
She had a lot about her, didn't she?
She was naturally overshadowed by Elsie and Ena and Annie and Ken.
But also,
the list goes on.
The role that she played in the show was a little bit taken over by Val. But I keep comparing them, but I don't want to make it clear that I don't think they were exactly the same person, because, like I said, I think Val was a bit more educated and a bit more switched on to politics and current affairs, but they were similar in that they were both steely young women who were sensible and kept their wits about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, check her out if you haven't seen any of her episodes. Do watch the Roof one. That's available online, although that doesn't show Christine at her sparkly best.
I wouldn't say she was sparkly though. I think she was just sarcastic and...
Yeah, she was sarcastic. I could just imagine her kind of schmoozing into the cafe, into Snape's cafe, and just with a kind of a wry smile on her face, and just hunting for fellas.
Different from the other young girls though, because they were all very flighty and giggly and like light-hearted, and
they kind of wanted a Prince Charming sort of guy.
She was always a bit dark. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, you go ahead and you say that. If you haven't watched the first 10 episodes of Coronation Street, definitely do, because that story with her mum dying as well.
Exactly,
fantastic.
That's what I mean. Most of the stories that she was involved in, her big stories were, mum died, she wanted to kill herself, and then she was stuck in a romance she didn't want to be in.
Right, when you put it like that.
There's not really much opportunity for her to be like, I'm the life and soul of the party. Like when she had, when she was
in between
from scene
stories.
to scene, she was fairly light-hearted, but she had some proper dark stories.
Yeah, I was looking through the books, like I said, and this quote that was written down, or maybe this was on Corriepedia, I can't remember. It's I suppose fairly dark.
This was from the episode.
Yeah.
When she tells Frank she doesn't want to marry him.
Yeah, I trap myself. I run into traps. I should stand still, but I run on roofs, away from men, towards men. You're right, it was poetic, wasn't it? Away from myself, mainly. Why do people never hit me more for what I do to them? They should hit me more.
Yeah.
60s,
That's internalised misogyny.
It really, really is. So there we go, just under an hour. That's pretty much all you could ever possibly need to know about Christine Hardman, I think, or Christine Appleby as she grew to be. I'd really be interested to hear from other people who've seen some of the old episodes whether you enjoyed Christine as much as we did.
What do you think?
What is it about her that you enjoyed so much?
There you go.
Thanks
for listening.
Thank you,
I
everybody,
hope
for
even if
listening.
you've got no idea who we're talking about, you can.
I hope we've inspired you to go and have a look.
Yeah.